Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 4th of September of 2024. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about new missile that Ukrainians are going to receive from the Western countries. We're talking about AGM-158 JASSM. This is long-range missile that can attack deep inside the territory of Russian Federation for around 370 kilometers. And as for the latest version of this missile have the ability to strike at a range of up to 980 kilometers. And the Western sources are saying that, and the experts are saying that Ukrainians are going to use this missile for the first time during the 7th or before the 7th of October. And this is the birthday of the President of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. And according to information we have, experts at Modern War Research are confident that the delivery of this type of missile to Kiev will be officially announced right before the attack. This means that they will be delivered to the territory of Ukraine much earlier. Earlier, The Guardian wrote about Ukraine's plan to bring war to the cities of the Russian Federation, including strikes on Moscow and St. Petersburg. Other Western media outlets are widely distributing map of possible targets of these missiles, Storm Shadow attack missiles as well. When talking about this map, this is exactly what we are talking about. So as you can see, if Ukrainians receive this type of weapon, then they will be able to attack Moscow, they will be able to attack a lot of Russian military bases, aviation bases that the Russians are using to attack the territory of Ukraine with cruise missiles and so on. And the most important and the most dangerous part of this is not that Ukrainians will be able to attack Moscow or St. Petersburg. As I understand, according to my understanding of the situation, the most dangerous thing is that Ukrainians will be able to begin bombing and attacking the Kaliningrad, the region of Russian Federation that is located between Poland and the Baltic states. As I understand, this is most unprotected part of Russian Federation, and of course Ukrainians will use this bomb to start bombing, and the most important, to start destroying the military infrastructure of this region, which will of course may ease the possible further operation conducted by the NATO countries in this part of Russia. So everything has its own meaning. Everything is planned by NATO countries, not for some reason, obviously. Now let's move further and let's talk about the situation in Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians conducted another massive missile strike, and the heaviest explosions, the biggest explosions took place in Lvov, in the western part of Ukraine. As you can see, the Polish authorities haven't raised their aircraft to bring down these missiles. Currently, we see that there are no negotiations, no real agreement between Poland and Ukraine. According to information we have, the Russians attacked the railway station. Most likely the Russians managed to destroy some ammo depot or the warehouse of the armed forces of Ukraine. Now let's talk about the eastern part of Ukraine. We're going to move to the Sumy region. We got another video, very important video. The Ukrainians, for some reason, continue the concentration of their forces in this part of Ukraine, right in front of the line of combat contact, right in front of the area that is overpopulated with Russian drones and reconnaissance equipment. And as a result of another reconnaissance operation, the Russians managed to discover a huge amount of Ukrainian vehicles and personnel and soldiers and so on. And as a result of Iskander strike, everything was destroyed. And you know that the Russians began using Iskander a lot, too much for Ukraine. They don't have enough of, let's say, air defense systems to destroy so many missiles from the Russian side. Almost every single day we got another video of how the Russians destroyed another concentration of forces, or another HIMARS system, or another Patriot system, or another IRIS-T system. So a lot of Western vehicles were destroyed exactly as a result of Russian Iskander strike. And for example, in this video we can see another episode how the Russians discovered the positions of Ukrainian multiple launch rocket systems. Maybe this is Vampires, maybe this is another HIMARS system, and as a result of Iskander strike, that system was also destroyed. So as you can see, the Russians are not counting their missiles. It seems that they have, let's say, endless number of them. As for the Ukrainians, they also continue improving their military science, their military idea, and starting of yesterday or the day before yesterday, the Ukrainians began publishing very interesting videos, and I would like to share these videos with you. This is something new during the special special military operation. And in this video we can see the work of Ukrainian flamethrower drone. You know that we used to let's say get to those flamethrower systems, the systems that the Russians are using against the Ukrainian forces. And now the Ukrainians, as you can see, managed to improve their own drones, and they found a solution how they can burn out and set on fire Russian positions before assault operation. And the military experts are saying that these attacks don't do big damage, huge damage to the Russian soldiers or to any force on the ground. But obviously, by the attack of this type of weapon, you can cause a lot of damage in the future. You can set the fortifications on fire. You can force the enemies or opponents to fall back. You can destroy ammo depot. So very interesting approach, and most likely we're going to see more and more videos of this type. And furthermore, during just the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians published 2 more videos of this type of attack. The second episode took place in Chasiv Yar direction, in the vicinity of the village by the name of not Bogdanovka, but a little bit further in the area of Tarskoye. Yes, in Tarskoye salient, the Ukrainian sources published the video how their drone of the 63rd Mechanized Brigade was burning out the Russian positions along some tree line. So once again, we don't know for sure what kind of damage the Ukrainians managed to achieve by this attack, but obviously due to the fact that Ukrainians began using this weapon massively, means that maybe it can do something. And another video we got from the Kharkiv direction, the units of the 42nd Mechanized Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine began using the same type of drone. In this video we can see another drone flamethrower system that burned the Russian positions out, and once again we don't know for sure whether it's a very big pain or it's just a picture that can show the Ukrainians that they also can improve their weapon and to show something new. Anyway, let's wait for additional details. Obviously, if the Ukrainians began using the tactics, that means that the Russians will use the same, and maybe they will improve this tactic significantly. Maybe the Russians will start using the real TOS flamethrower systems and make them flying above the Ukrainians and to attacking the Ukrainian positions with real flamethrower equipment and weapon, but not just with some, I don't know, weapon like these drones can use. Now let's go to the line of combat contact. We have additional updates, and according to information we have, the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to restore completely lost positions during the Ukrainian greatest counteroffensive of 2023. So summarizing everything, today on the 4th of September of 2024, the Russians finished the Ukrainian greatest counteroffensive of 2023 by recapturing every single square kilometer they lost during that offensive, during that Ukraine counteroffensive. And now if the Russians go further in the northern direction, this will mean that the Russians begin their own offensive and started attack towards Novodanilovka and Mala Takmachka. Now let's talk about the South Donetsk direction. We have changes on the ground. As you can see, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. According to information we have, and according to the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, as a result of very heavy clashes, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the village by the name of Prichistovka, and furthermore they managed to secure the area, and very fast. They managed to do this very fast. The Ukrainians left their positions and ran away towards the village of Zolotaya Niva, Novoukrainka and Shakhtarskaya. This information was confirmed also by pro-Ukrainian mappers. They have adjusted their map. They have colored Prichistovka under complete Russian control. And later we got another video. Let's take a look at this video. In this video we can see the Ukrainians who were running away from the village of Prichistovka towards the village of Zolotaya Niva. This position was geolocated by these two trees. It was easy to geolocate the road where exactly the Ukrainians were running, and the icon is located strictly in this area. This is the first tree and this is the second one. So as you can see, the video was let's say made very close to Prichistovka itself. So the Russians were very close to these positions, but the Russians didn't bomb the Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians ran away. They entered Zolotaya Niva, and some sources are saying that the Russians most likely during the next few days will try to attack in direction of this village as well. If the Russians are able to do this, and if the Russians are able to take under control the village of Zolotaya Niva, then it's not just risks for the city of Ogledar, Novoukrainka. First of all, it's going to be a very high risk for the city of Velika Novoselovka. And most likely the Russians later, after the Ukrainians withdrew their positions, attacked their bases in the city of Shakhtarskaya. In this video we can see few FABs arrived on the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine, maybe of the 58th Brigade that abandoned their positions in the city of Prichistovka. So very interesting situation. Furthermore, I'll remind you that according to different mappers, according to different sources on the ground, yesterday the Russians managed to secure not just the village of Prichistovka, they managed to cross the Kashlygach river and to establish a strong control over some positions on the Ukrainian side of the river. And currently the Russians are concentrating additional forces, they're bringing additional reinforcements and reserves, and maybe tomorrow or the day after, or maybe the Russians have already begun another offensive operation along the road between Prichistovka and Novoukrainka itself, and we'll see what is going to next. Because if the Ukrainians don't have enough of forces, and if the Russians are able to defeat the Ukrainians in this village as well, then the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back to Bogayavlenka. And this case, this is going to be a significant problem for the Ukrainians, because from this perspective the Ukrainians will not be able to hold their lines, and this front line will collapse as we see the same collapse in the Progress Novogrodovka direction. Now let's move to Ugledar. We have a lot of geolocations, as you can see, yet the Russians haven't started the ground operation. During the previous 24 hours we got lots of episodes, a lot of videos of how the Russians were FPV droning the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine around the city, a lot of strikes, a lot of positions, communication equipment, so everything just for one reason: to begin the ground operation. We don't know for sure when exactly the Russians are planning to begin assault in Ugledar, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after, but obviously only after the Russians are able to secure this part of the coal mine itself and the landfill, and most likely when the Russians will be able to take under control the village of Vadiana. And as for the Vadiana, according to information, the Russians are storming this area from two directions, from the southern part and from the northern part, and according to different mappers, pro-Ukrainian, neutral and pro-Russian, the Russians managed to enter either both the southern part of Vadiana and the northern. So we don't know for sure for how long the Ukrainians are able to hold their positions, but most likely they would be forced to fall back very soon. And as soon as Vadiana falls, then I believe we can start counting maybe days when Ugledar will be captured by the Russians. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Nivoyska, Krasnogorovka, Kurahovo cauldron. According to information we have, the Ukrainians continue abandoning their positions, but as for this process, currently this process under complete control of the armored forces of Ukraine. We don't see panic, we don't see like that Ukrainians are running away and abandoning their positions and weapon and everything they can and wounded. The Ukrainians are doing this process very slowly, step by step, without panic. Everything is organized. At least during the 3rd and 4th of September, the process looked like this. Everything was under control. We don't know what is the situation is going to be tomorrow, but for now everything is okay from the Ukrainian side. As for the northern pincer, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to establish additional control over the territories between Galicinovka itself and Zhelanная Persha. I'll remind you that yesterday the sources reported, pro-Russian sources reported, that Zhelanная Persha was completely captured by the Russians, but as for the 4th of September we still haven't received anything that can confirm this. The same story take place in the village of Lisevka. Yesterday the Russian sources reported that the village was captured completely by the Russians, but as of the 4th of September, different reliable mappers confirmed just some control over northern part of this village, and most likely the Russians are currently trying to dig in deeper. Anyway, we can see and we can confirm that the Russian progress was slowed down during the previous few days, mainly due to the fact that Ukrainians managed to redeploy a significant number of forces from the Kursk direction, and probably this is the reason why the Russians began full-scale offensive operation in the south, because the Ukrainians managed to stabilize the situation in the area of Pokrovsk but not in the area of the South Donetsk, and to stabilize the situation here as well, the Ukrainians need to bring additional forces, probably also from the Kursk direction, and which will mean complete defeat and complete collapse of the Kursk offensive. Now let's talk about Novogrodovka. According to information we have, currently there are very heavy clashes for this landfill. The Russians are storming this area wave by wave, and according to information we have, currently this is no one's land. Neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians control the landfill and the coal mine. This territory is in the gray zone, and during the day the territory changed its owner probably for 3-4 times just a day. As for the northern direction, the Ukrainian sources published the video from the 93rd Brigade. In this video, we can see the Ukrainian tank that was attacking the Russian positions around the landfill. This is the area, this is the position of Ukrainian tank, and this is the territory that was bombed by the Ukrainians. This video confirms two things. First of all, that the landfill, this Terikon and this coal mine is under complete Russian control, and that this tree line is under complete Ukrainian control. So now we see more or less the line of defense and the line of combat contact. As you can see, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything on the line between Mykolaiivka, Krasny Yar, Krutoy Yar, Grodovka, and Novotoretskaya. So, which is very interesting and very weird, because according to different mappers, this territory was captured by the Russians a long time ago, but we still haven't received anything that can confirm this. Now, let's move further. Let's talk about New York. The Ukrainians continue attempts to unblock their forces inside of the cauldrons. I'll remind you that according to information we have, currently there are 2 cauldrons in the area. The first cauldron is located in the heart of New York in this industrial zone, and the second cauldron is located here. And the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours conducted an attack with the purpose to unblock the Ukrainians and to allow them to evacuate soldiers from the industrial zone, but that attack most likely was repelled. In this video we can see Ukrainian vehicles that entered the territory. The Ukrainians landed in this area, probably captured some buildings and began, let's say, developing their foothold, but the Russians destroyed these vehicles as a result of FPV drone attacks. So let's wait for additional updates, because something tells me that the battle for New York hasn't been finished yet. Now let's move further. As for the Chasiv Yar, we haven't received anything special, just a regular activity without any changes on the ground. The same story is coming from the Sivers direction, just the regular activity. The Ukrainians were bombing the Russian forces, which confirms the line of combat contact. The Russians were bombing the Ukrainians, which also confirms Ukraine control over Verkhnetoretskaya and the strongholds around. So nothing special. We are waiting for additional updates, what is going to happen during the next days. As for the Kupiansk direction, the same story. There are very heavy clashes, but without any changes on the ground. The Ukrainians continue building pontoon bridges along the Skol River, and the Russians continue attacking these bridges, these pontoon bridges, with Iskander missiles, trying to reduce the Ukrainian logistic. But once again, no changes on the ground. I'll remind you that according to updates, the Russians managed to get very close to river of Oskol, but yet without any attempts to begin assault of the cities along the river. And let's talk about Kharkiv direction, because as for the previous 24 hours, the clashes in this direction were intensified by both sides, either the Russians and the Ukrainians. For some period of time, this direction was completely uninteresting. There were no movements, no updates, nothing, but starting of the 4th of September, we began receiving more and more updates of how the Russians were attacking and destroying Ukrainian vehicles, Ukrainian positions, all over the entire Volchansk direction, lots of explosions, lots of FPV drone attacks. Maybe the Russians do have some plans to resume their attempts to establish complete control over the city. Also from this direction, as we have already discussed in the beginning of the video, the Ukrainians used their new weapon of TOS flamethrower drones by destroying Russian positions before possible offensive operation. So for now, the Russians obviously haven't found any solution against these drones, and very interesting, very interesting. As for Gluboka, during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians conducted a serious number of counterattacks with the purpose to restore control over the village of Gluboka, but the Ukrainians haven't managed to reach even the first defense belt of the Russians. They were destroyed as a result of FPV drone strikes, or maybe they were destroyed as a result of distance mining method. So 2 vehicles were destroyed and Ukrainian soldiers were forced to fall back. As for the Kursk direction, during the previous 24 hours, nothing special, just a regular activity and significant number of destroyed Ukrainian vehicles. The Russian sources published the video, probably is something like lots of episodes that have been taking place since the beginning of September. Lots of vehicles, lots of artillery systems, lots of Ukrainian positions were destroyed and attacked by the Russian FPV drones, which confirms that the front line is static, and while the front line is static, the Ukrainians suffer significant losses. If they want to reduce the losses, the Ukrainians need to attack, but they can't do this because they still wasn't authorized by the Western countries to use the Western weapon deep inside of the territory of Russian Federation. Without this authorization, there is no Even it's not a very smart thing to continue offensive operation. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.